Finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Time to install Joomla. Before you can install Joomla, you're going to need to install either WAMP if you're on a Windows computer or MAMP if you're on a Macintosh computer. And you can get those URLs by going to Google and Googling for WAMP or MAMP. And that will lead you to the websites where you can download this free software and install it on your computer. If you need more information about how to download WAMP or MAMP, you can take a look at David Gessner's course on WAMP and MAMP and follow his instructions for installing that software. Once you have it working, you'll know that you have it working if you open up your web browser and you go on the PC to localhost, just the word localhost, and hit enter. There's no .coms, no .orgs, just localhost. And you should see a page that looks very similar to this. If you're on a Macintosh, you'll need to go to a page that's something like localhost:8888. And you should see a page with an elephant on it, which will be the MAMP installation. And if you see those pages, then you've done everything correctly. Once you have that installed, the next thing we need to do is download and install Joomla. So to do that, you're going to open up a web browser, open up a new tab, and go to www.joomla.org. And this is the Joomla website in its current incarnation. And you can see that they're talking about Joomla 3 right here on the homepage. So what we'd like to do is download Joomla. So what we're going to do is here under the Download tab, you can see that we can either download Joomla 2.5 or download Joomla 3. And downloading Joomla 3 is what we want to do. So go ahead and click on Download Joomla 3 Full Package. This will put us onto a page for downloading Joomla. And the first thing that's listed is downloading Joomla 2.5, which is recommended for most websites. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we get to downloading Joomla 3. And what we want to do is download whatever the most recent version of Joomla 3 is. So right now today, that is Joomla 3.0.1 full package, a zip file. If you're watching this video sometime later than today, as it's likely to be the case, what you'll want to do is look for this same kind of button, whether that's Joomla 3.1 or Joomla 3.5 or some other version of Joomla 3.0. Just look for this button, go ahead and click on it. I'm running Firefox, so I get a window that looks like this. If you happen to be running Chrome, Safari, or Internet Explorer, you'll get something similar to this, but not exactly the same. It's going to give you a choice of either opening the file that you download or saving it to your computer. And you can do either. I'm going to go ahead and open this up because ultimately what I'm going to want to do is pull all of these files out and put them into my WAMP installation. So I'm going to go ahead and say open with, and I'm going to say OK. And what will happen is that Joomla will go ahead and download here. And here are all of the files that make up Joomla inside of that zipped file. What I'm going to do now is, inside of my computer here, inside of my C drive, inside of my WAMP folder, and inside of my www folder, this is where these Joomla files are going to go. If you're working on a Macintosh, you're going to go to Applications, you're going to find your MAMP installation, and you're going to look for a folder called htdocs. And inside of the htdocs folder is where all of this information is going to go. The very first thing that I'm going to do here inside of this folder is take what's here, just going to highlight it and delete, and send all of that stuff right to the recycle bin. Macintosh people, if there's anything that's in that htdocs folder, go on ahead and delete that as well. One small point I'd like to make for some of you who follow along with many of my courses, you may already have something in your www folder or your htdocs folder that may be another Joomla installation that you'd like to keep. If that's the case, just make a new folder inside of www or htdocs, and you can install Joomla in that other folder. In order to see that version of Joomla in that installation, what you'll need to do is go to localhost/that folder name on WAMP or localhost:8888/that folder name if you're on a Macintosh. And that will show you that installation of Joomla 3. But I'm just going to do this right straight into the www folder for those of you who are new to this process. So what I'm going to do is here inside of my zip file that I downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight absolutely everything that's here inside of this folder. And I'm simply going to drag that contents here into my www folder. That's here on my WAMP installation. If I was doing this on a Mac, I would be dragging these files into my htdocs folder. And we'll give it just a minute to go ahead and transfer this stuff. Okay, so we've unzipped all of those files and folders, and we've copied them into the www folder in WAMP or the htdocs folder on MAMP. And you can close the window that had all of the zip file in it. So go ahead and close that. So that's step one. We've downloaded Joomla, we've unzipped it, and we've copied it into the location here inside of our folders. The next thing we need to do is make a database for Joomla. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my web browser, and I'm going to go to localhost/phpMyAdmin. That's if you're here on a WAMP machine. If you're on a Macintosh machine, from that MAMP page with the little elephant on it, there's a link where you can click on that to go to this same phpMyAdmin screen, or you can go to localhost:8888/phpMyAdmin, and that should take you to this same interface. So now we just need to make a database. So to do that, we're going to click on this tab up here at the top that says Databases. And right here in the middle of the page is a box where it says Create Database. So all we need to do is type in a name for our database. How about Joomla? So go ahead and type in a name for your database and say Create. And that will make a database here for you inside of phpMyAdmin. That's all you need to do. Just create the blank database. And you do not need to create a database user or a database username and password. None of that needs to be done. We can use the default database user that comes with WAMP or MAMP. So you can go ahead and close that as soon as you're done. So that's step two. We've downloaded Joomla, we unzipped the files, we made a database, and now we're ready to run the installation process. So in another tab inside of Firefox, go ahead and go to localhost or localhost:8888. If you've already got it open, as I do here, just hit the refresh button, and this should open Joomla's installation screens. So you'll notice, those of you who are familiar with Joomla, this looks really quite different than what we've seen before with Joomla, but it's still the same old Joomla underneath, and it's pretty much the same information you're accustomed to. It's just arranged differently now on the screen. So first of all, we can select a language that we'd like to have installed here with Joomla, and you can choose any one of these from the list. I'm just going to stick with English and the United States localization. Under the main configuration, I can type in a name for my Joomla website. This is required information. I know that because it's starred. So I'm going to type in a name for this as Connect Eco. I can provide a description for this website if I wish. This will wind up being the global meta description for the website. It's something you can set in Joomla's global configuration. I'll show you how to do that later in another video, but for those of you who are familiar with Joomla, if you already have that global meta description available, you can put it in here and it will show up on every page of your Joomla website. Over here on the side is your admin email. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in as info@connecteco.com. Then I'm going to put in my admin username and password. By default, my admin username is pre-filled in as admin. If you are doing this in the real world, where this website's going to go out and be seen by millions, do not use admin as your username. Use anything else in the world but admin. The reason why is for many, many years with Joomla 1.0 and Joomla 1.5, admin was the default username and there was no way to change that. So anytime a hacker comes to visit your website, the very first thing they're going to try to do is get into your website using the username of admin. And that will be half of the information that they need to get into your Joomla website. Why give hackers such an easy ride? So ideally, you'll change this to absolutely anything else. And ideally, you're going to set an admin password that's strong. So use uppercase and lowercase letters, use some funny characters, use some numbers. Having now told you all of that, I'm going to ignore all of my own advice. And I'm simply going to put in an admin username of admin and an admin password of admin. Why? Because I'm running Joomla right here on my local computer, And I'm not really concerned about an outside hacker hacking into something that's running on the computer that's in front of me. As soon as we get all the way through this course to the very end, and I need to transfer this website to my web host, one of the very first things that I'm going to do as soon as I put this on my web host is change my login immediately from admin to anything else in the world. Although I'm using admin now, please do not use that in the real world. So I'm going to confirm my password of admin. Scrolling on down here a little bit further, those of you who are familiar with Joomla will notice this thing at the bottom that says Site Offline. This is a new feature in Joomla 3.0. You can install Joomla so that you can have the whole site password protected right from the start as soon as it goes live. And what that means is that when you go to the front end of the website and you want to see the website as it's installed, you will have to type in a username and password in order to see that interface. So that's great to have this username and password available if you're building something that's out on a web host and you don't want the world to see it while it's under construction. But right here inside of our local computer, this is a little bit inconvenient to constantly have to type in a username and password to see the front end of the website. So I'm going to leave this set to no, but certainly feel free to set it to yes. And this is something that you can configure inside of Joomla's global configuration and turn it on and off as often as you like. So if you leave it off for now, but later you want to turn it on, it's a very straightforward and easy process to do. So don't feel like this is your only opportunity. All right, scroll back on up to the top of the screen and we'll hit the next button. This will take us into information about our database. So what we're going to do here with our database is leave the database type set to MySQLi. Our host name is going to be localhost if you're running MAMP or WAMP. If you're running this on a web server or web hosting environment, it's likely that your host name is still localhost, but you'll need to check with your host to make sure that it is or it's something different, and your host will tell you that. Enter your username for your database. Now, for WAMP people, the username is root and the password is blank. For those of you who are MAMP people, your username is root and your password is root. So make sure you enter root twice if you're on MAMP. WAMP people just has root, username, and no password. And as you can see, that's a real security issue. Okay, and then finally, we need to remember our database name, and that was just Joomla. And if you called yours something else, then type in whatever it is that you called your database. The last part is the table prefix. This is randomly generated by Joomla. It's a random 5-character prefix that will go in front of the database table names inside of Joomla. And there's no reason to change this. Joomla will just pick something random for you. If you wanted to type in something in particular, you could, but generally speaking, that's something you can just ignore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And of course, by the way, that database table prefix, you're going to have something entirely different than what I have here on my screen, and that's okay. It's not going to affect anything. Just go ahead and leave it there. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And I'm in my final screen here where I have a choice of installing some sample data. And in previous versions of Joomla, there was only one set of sample data. You pretty much pick to say yes or no in terms of installing it. With Joomla 3, there are 5 different kinds of sample data that you can install. And what sample data is a bunch of content, both articles, categories, module configurations, a whole bunch of stuff that will set your website up for you in advance to either be a blog or a brochure-based website, or the default sample data that we've always had in Joomla, or even this new test environment, which is really designed for the Joomla Bug Squad, the people that test Joomla before it's released to the public. I'm actually going to leave my sample data to none because I want a completely blank installation of Joomla. You're more than welcome to install any of this sample data, but what I find is that what eventually happens is that you're going to delete it all anyway, and it just creates extra work to delete it in the long term. But if you'd like to install any of the sample data, just so you can poke around and see Joomla's new features, by all means, go ahead and pick one of those and install it. Down towards the bottom of the screen, we can configure email, and here's a whole bunch of the setting kind of things that we used to see in the first few screens of Joomla installation. The nice part about all of this is that it's down at the bottom of the screen because really, truly, Only super geeks need to take a look at all this stuff. For the rest of us, it's probably all configured just fine. Go ahead and let it be exactly the way it is. So I'm going to hit this install button. And as you can see, Joomla is installing very, very quickly. And then congratulations, Joomla is now installed. The very last thing that we have to do before we can run Joomla is to remove the installation directory. And that is done by clicking this very convenient button right here. So it'll tell you that the installation folder has been successfully removed. And now we can proceed to look at the front end of the website by clicking this button here called Site, or the back end of the website, the administrator side of Joomla in the configuration screens, by clicking on this button here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the Site button. And you can see that we have an installation of Joomla right here. And this is the way the front end of our website looks. This is where we're starting from. Not terribly exciting at the moment, but we'll be putting in some content here and making it more interesting in the next few videos. So one last little piece of advice to those of you who are either professional web developers who are making the transition from building static websites into building these content management system-based websites, or for those of you who want to become professional web developers. As you can see, there's a lot of database usernames and passwords. There's Joomla logins, there's web hosting usernames and passwords, there's domain name usernames and passwords. There's a lot of username and passwords that are associated with a content management website. And particularly if you're a professional, you need to track all of these in some way or another. And you need to do this in a secure way. There are a lot of online repositories available for tracking usernames and passwords. Some of these run on your individual local computer. Some of these run as some kind of service that you can sign up for in the world. And I recommend that you find one of these services and make use of it, because you're going to need to come back to the zillions of usernames and passwords. There's no way that you can possibly remember all of these. My personal favorite is called PassPack. And if you go to www.passpack.com, you'll see that this is a very user-friendly password repository that you can sign up for. I believe it's free for up to 100 accounts. So as you're just getting into content management systems, you can certainly sign up for this and use it for free. And it will track all of those wonderful usernames and passwords for every website that you build. The fact that it's online means that there's even ways that you can share this with collaborators or with clients if they need to access those usernames and passwords as well. So make sure you have some sort of way of professionally tracking all of your usernames and passwords, whatever method it is that you wind up choosing.